Twycross Zoo is an 88-acre park which was founded in 1963. They have over 500 animals of almost 150 species, including the UK's only group of bonobos. In 2013, they won the Biarza's Best Sustainable Zoo or Aquarium and Best Education Project Awards. Like all zoos in Great Britain, they must adhere to the Zoo Licensing Act 1981. This piece of legislation was put in place to allow members of the public to view wild animals. It applies to any zoo to which members of the public have access, with or without charge for admission, on more than 7 days for any 12 consecutive months. The Act aims to ensure that the welfare of captive animals is met. For example, they should be provided with a suitable environment to provide an opportunity to express normal behaviours. The Zoo Licensing Act 1981 requires the inspection of all zoos in Great Britain to ensure that the zoo is abiding by the Act. This video will consider how effectively Twycross Zoo is adhering to the Zoo Licensing Act by inspecting health and safety, conservation and education, and whether the zoo could make any improvements.
The Zoo Directive requires zoos to promote public education and awareness of biodiversity, particularly by providing information about the species exhibited and their natural habitats. There must be suitable facilities available for education purposes, and zoos should be able to demonstrate an educational role within the zoo. The most common and cost-effective way to educate the public about each species is through signage outside of the species enclosure. The minimum amount of information required within the taxonomic sign should be the species' scientific and common name, natural habitat, conservation status, and some of its biological characteristics. Twycross Zoo provides this information for all of its animals, but some signage is less informative than others. The signs outside the marmot enclosure are small and less informative than the signs outside of the larger enclosures. This could be fixed easily as these signs are an anomaly amongst the others, which are much more informative. There has been evidence to show that visitors do not read the signs due to a perceived lack of time. Additional signage and interactive materials installed in the exhibit can significantly increase the dwell time of visitors who interact with the materials. Visitors who fully engaged with the signs by lifting the interactive flaps demonstrated actual learning when questioned about the signs later. Twycross Zoo has a number of these interactive signs, and the aim of them is to engage the public with the species and the threats they may face. The interactive sign within the lorikeet landing enclosure is informative, but the feathers contained within it look dated. These could easily be replaced in order to visually appeal to the visitors. Digital technology can be used to gain visitor attention. For example, the digital displays found in the elephant room at Twycross Zoo and interactive signs outside the gorilla enclosure informing the public about the Ape Heart project. QR codes could be used on signage, which could enable zoos to provide additional information to visitors even after their zoo visit. This then has the potential to extend the zoo's educational reach. In 2014, Twycross Zoo opened their butterfly house. This butterfly house is a walk-through exhibit which allows visitors to observe free-roaming butterflies with the added bonus of educational posts stationed throughout the house. Live butterfly exhibits have been shown to stimulate strong and positive responses among people of all age groups. Twycross Zoo has information on the butterfly life cycle, anatomical adaptations, and behavioural adaptations to enable survival. Given that butterflies go through metamorphosis, this makes them ideal as subjects to introduce sexual reproduction and life cycles. Twycross Zoo also has a number of educational buildings specifically for school and university talks. They provide opportunities for primary school children all the way up to university level. Zoo Club is an activity that runs for 10 weeks out of the year outside school term time to allow children to get involved in mucking out and enrichment building for the animals. Zooniversity centres on zoological-based careers and aims to continue educating these students to encourage them to continue with their studies. Twycross Zoo provides a number of awareness-raising events, such as penguin celebrations and monkey march, which allow people to get involved in enrichment making. These events allow visitors to engage with the threats these animals face and allows them to discover what they can do to help.
Eating poo!
Captive breeding. As wild species populations continue to decrease, the ability of zoos and other facilities such as seed banks and botanical gardens to effectively maintain thriving populations is increasingly important. Captive breeding should be encouraged where appropriate and controlled measures put in place to prevent overpopulation. Most animals at Twycross Zoo are part of the European and international breeding programme. In 2014, Twycross Zoo became home to 2 Amur leopard cubs and an Asian elephant calf. Captive breeding plays a vital role in the recovery of endangered species. If the ultimate goal of captive breeding is to re-establish new populations in the wild, it is imperative for zoos and botanical gardens to become more involved in the breeding and reintroduction of populations. The Amur leopard is one of the rarest cat species in the world due to the threats posed by poaching, habitat destruction, and lack of prey. Field projects. In 2014, 6 different conservation projects received support through the Twycross Zoo Conservation Welfare Fund. The project Action Africa Cameroon received donations from Twycross Zoo in order to support the running costs of the sanctuary. Members from Twycross also visited the sanctuary in order to provide vital veterinary expertise for the housed animals there. Lolia Bonobo, Democratic Republic of the Congo, is the world's only sanctuary for bonobos. Most of the individuals are victims of bushmeat and illegal pet trades. This project also runs a 50,000-acre reserve which is home to the first bonobos to be reintroduced into the wild. Another project, Wildlife Vets International, aims to conserve the Amur leopard. Wildlife Vets International are currently working in the far east of Russia to assess the feasibility of a reintroduction program to safeguard this critically endangered species. They have made significant advances in translating the disease surveillance protocols into Russian, which will allow increased future collaboration with Russian vets and researchers. Reintroduction is the intentional movement of captured rare animals into a species' historic range to augment or re-establish wild populations. Zoo-bred animals are rarely used in reintroduction projects, and the success of these programs depends to a large extent on the ability of released animals to reproduce in their natural habitats. Previous studies on marmots have shown that captive-born individuals suffer a higher mortality than those born in the wild. Captive-born marmots were much more vulnerable to avian predators than wild-born. If reintroduction is the ultimate goal of zoos, then more effort should be made to make sure these animals are bred and trained to be able to survive if they are released. The study on release of captive marmots showed that there was no evidence that survival differed among sexes or age classes, suggesting that reintroduction is a feasible plan for any individual of a species. Exposing the captive-born marmots to avian predators before reintroduction may enhance their survival in wild habitats and contribute to the success of the release program. This, however, is unproven and would be financially and logistically challenging to implement. Ex situ conservation has a more important role to play, especially in the face of the evidence of increasing extinction rates intensified by climate change. Species such as the giant panda have been driven to near extinction through habitat loss by human activities, including logging and construction work. Failing to intervene when a species is declining can virtually guarantee extinction. Captive breeding has a use in the recovery of endangered species. Health and safety at Twycross Zoo. Barriers. Most enclosures at Twycross Zoo have secure double barrier systems. The hyena enclosure, for example, has a wire mesh fence keeping the animals in and a waist-height wooden fence to prevent the public approaching the enclosure. They have also planted vegetation between the fences to prevent small children getting under the public fence. There were areas for improvement. The penguin enclosure, although sufficient to prevent animal escape, would be very easy for the public to enter. This could be rectified by either increasing the height of the current barrier or putting in place a second public barrier. Firearms. The Zoo Licensing Act 1981 requires all zoos that keep potentially dangerous animals to have written procedures in place in case of animal escape. The control and capture of a potentially dangerous animal will undoubtedly involve the use of a remote immobilisation equipment and firearms or shotguns. Twycross has a small team of staff who hold current firearms certificates and or shotgun licences, which complies with the Firearms Act 1968. Staff members have also undergone training and regular refresher training, which is recorded. Public facilities. Twycross Zoo provides sufficient toilet facilities for the 450,000 visitors on average that they receive each year. Hand washing amenities are provided at all of the animal introduction enclosures apart from the Pets at Twycross area where only sanitizer was provided. DEFRA state that warm water and soap should be provided as well as sanitizer where animal interaction may take place.
It's legit not working.
Signage. Twycross Zoo provide many health and safety signs around the zoo informing the public of hazardous areas such as an electric fence which has a warning sign on both sides and wet surfaces signs around the penguin enclosure. However, some of the signs could be larger and more obvious. Here are a few more examples of signage at the zoo.
Shutterstock Music.